Welcome to Perfectionists Anonymous, a podcast-style channel dedicated to unraveling the myth of perfectionist living. I'm your host, Caitlin, and I'm a recovering perfectionist. I invite you to sit down, relax, and hang out with me, your supportive friend, who knows how difficult perfectionism can be and who wants to find a better way. Thank you for joining me today. Every man has his secret sorrows, which the world knows not, and oftentimes we call a man cold when he is only sad. Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. Greetings, fellow perfectionists. I hope you are all doing well. Before we get into this week's topic, I wanted to share a real-time moment of combating perfectionistic thought patterns. You may be able to hear it in my voice, but I have been sick with a cold the last few days. I am vaccinated and I received my negative COVID test, so I know that it is just a cold. But it's a pretty gnarly cold with all of the usual fun symptoms: sore throat, headache, congestion, runny nose, and exhaustion. Now, in the past, when I had a cold, I would do what society likes to say that people should do when they are sick: power through. Go to work even if you're sick, because your productivity is more important than anything else. Keep taking care of everyone else first, even if you're sick, because your generosity is more important than anything else. Keep cleaning the house, running errands, and completing all of your other responsibilities, even if you're sick, because otherwise you're being lazy and wimping out. It's just a cold, come on. That's how I used to look at having a cold. But whether the pandemic has changed things for me, or if it's simply the work that I've been doing on my perfectionistic thoughts, that is not how I handled my cold this time. Luckily enough, I was already supposed to have Thursday and Friday off this week, though I woke up with painful symptoms at 2 a.m. on Wednesday. After some hemming and hawing, I took the day off from work. I realized that the only reason that I was doubting myself was because of all of the should thoughts that I was having. All of the shaming thoughts about how I'm such a bad speech therapist if I don't go into work when I'm feeling sick. When actually, alternatively, I could be thinking that I'm a good speech therapist because I'm not exposing the children that I work with and my coworkers to a nasty cold. I'm a good speech therapist because I know that I wouldn't have enough energy to put into my sessions and they wouldn't be as effective. I'm a good speech therapist because allowing myself to rest early on in the cold will help me heal faster so that I'm able to return to work sooner at my fullest strength. And perhaps my favorite new thought that I've been trying out on top of all of these: I'm not just a speech therapist. I'm also a human. My whole existence is not my job, and sometimes things are just going to come up in my life that I need to prioritize over my job. My health and well-being is one of those things. I am more than my job. I also forced myself to rest well at home, even though this was hard. I have spent the majority of the last few days cuddled up on my couch with some YouTube, my cat, a heat pack, and a literal gallon of orange juice with daily emergency packs. I bundled myself up to go on long walks outside in the crisp autumn air because the freshness is healing for me. I didn't force myself to cook when I was unable. I didn't force myself to clean even though it had been on my to-do list, and I didn't force myself to work on this script even though I'm now a bit behind schedule. I didn't force myself to do any of these things because I needed to prioritize rest and recovery over everything else. My health matters, and I will get back to these other things eventually. I don't need to be quote-unquote on top of things all the time, because sometimes we just can't. Sometimes we need a break. Sometimes we need a rest. And that is absolutely, unequivocally okay. I think we all need more permission to rest once in a while, especially when your body is telling you that it desperately needs it. Anyway, that tangent aside, let's get into the meat of today's episode. This is the third and final episode in our little mini-series examining how perfectionism relates to the big three quote-unquote negative emotions. The first episode covered anxiety, the second covered anger, and today's episode covers sadness. In the movie Inside Out, which I mentioned in the episode about anxiety and I will again highly recommend, as it is literally one of the best movies ever made, the story centers around the main character, a girl named Riley. We get intimately acquainted with the emotions in Riley's brain, and it becomes immediately apparent that there is a central conflict between joy, Riley's primary emotion, and sadness. It seems that Riley is a naturally joyful, excited, lovable girl, and she has been praised for that emotion time and again by her parents for being their happy little girl. They thank her for making things so easy. The way this manifests in Riley's brain is joy taking control over most aspects of Riley's life. In fact, joy often fights to maintain control, particularly when sadness tries to break in. Joy goes so far as to isolate sadness to one part of Riley's brain, to forbid sadness from trying to control Riley, to distract sadness so that she won't try to make Riley feel sad, and to pull away memories from sadness for fear that sadness will infect the memories. This ultimately results in Riley's brain breaking down, and joy and sadness getting ejected from the control room. As joy and sadness work to get back to the control room by going on several adventures through Riley's memory banks, subconscious, dream world, and so on, joy works from a place of viewing sadness as the bad emotion. Sadness is the one always messing things up for Riley. Sadness is useless. Sadness makes Riley feel bad for no reason. Sadness can't do anything right. It's not until one of the most beautiful scenes ever made that Joy starts to realize that there is so much more to sadness than she realized. Bing Bong, Riley's old and long-forgotten imaginary friend, is reminiscing about all of the good times that he had with toddler Riley, and he starts to cry as he mourns the loss. Riley hasn't remembered poor Bing Bong in a very long time, and he is starting to vanish from her memory altogether. Joy immediately tries to make Bing Bong feel better. She makes silly faces. She tells him to only think about all the good times. She tries to distract him. It doesn't work. What does work is when sadness sits with Bing Bong, holds his hand, recognizes his feelings of loss and empathizes with him, and tells him that it's okay. They hug, and Bing Bong is ready to move on, having effectively worked through his moment of mourning. Sadness is such a relatable human emotion that touches the very deepest corners of our hearts. Connected with feelings of loneliness, despair, depression, loss, mourning, hopelessness, and disappointment. It's one of those emotions that feels so visceral when we actually give it a chance to be felt. Sadness comes into play in so many moments in life, ranging from mourning the loss of a loved one to dropping your ice cream cone on the sidewalk. Like all of the other emotions we've talked about so far, it is completely normal and human to feel sad, to want to cry, to need to express vulnerability, and be comforted. There are a lot of misconceptions surrounding clinical depression and sadness, as if depression is simply feeling extra sad too often. While this would be a gross misrepresentation of depression, if you do feel like you experience feelings of sadness, hopelessness, or grief at a level that is impacting your ability to live your life, then I strongly recommend speaking to your doctor or a mental health professional to talk about options to support you. Today's episode, however, is about typical everyday levels of sadness and situational sadness and how they relate to perfectionism. Ultimately, perfectionism relates to sadness because we live in a culture and society that hyper-focuses on the positive and sunny things in life. Perfectly curated Instagram feeds, beautifully aesthetic TikTok feeds, every single person you meet answering with, "I'm good," when you ask how they're doing. Staying productive at all times so we don't slow down and actually recognize how we're feeling. Joy is the default setting in Western culture. You best be happy, and if you're not, well, then you probably aren't being grateful or working hard enough. I think an additional problem with this is that sadness has been relegated only to very specific moments in life. During these moments, it's appropriate to feel sadness, but then you have to feel it and move on. These moments are pretty big: the death of a family member, a divorce, the loss of a friend. Sadness might be socially acceptable in these moments, but it's best to grieve quickly and then move on with your life, or so the rules seem to suggest. It's not uncommon for someone to be experiencing deep sadness and to be told that it's really time for them to get back out there. And what of the little moments of sadness? Those little vulnerabilities that we all have and are so afraid to share. What happens when you're scrolling through your Instagram feed, looking at all the smiling people who seem to have no problems, and you suddenly feel very alone? What happens when you're really looking forward to something and it doesn't happen, and you suddenly feel waves of disappointment? What happens when you remember that one time as a kid when you were excluded from playing, and you suddenly feel wholly unloved? Pretty often, what happens is that you may share these vulnerabilities with people around you and receive a pretty de facto response in return. Something along the lines of, "Oh, well, that's not so bad. Look at all the good things you have. Well, at least this thing is going well for you. Other people have it worse. How can I fix it? What will make it better? How can I make it go away?" Eventually, I think a lot of us get trained into no longer sharing these little moments of sadness because it's never really received with validation. Emotional validation is something that our culture as a whole is really quite poor at because, again, negative emotions aren't supposed to exist. We're supposed to make them go away, not have them, cover them up, deal with them on our own, stifle them. Whatever we have to do in order for happiness and joy to be the main messages that we're spreading. So what happens is that the quote-unquote perfect way to handle sadness often ends up being to keep it to yourself and pretend like it's not there. Few things are more isolating than feeling like your emotions, particularly your sadness, are too much for other people to handle. For me, sadness often ends up becoming my last resort emotion. Whenever I'm having an intense experience, I usually start from a place of anger. I've learned recently that I use anger as a protective mechanism to cover up underlying feelings of fear and anxiety, so those are what I feel second. And then, when I've exhausted myself by feeling angry at the world and then afraid of whether or not I'm a bad person, I feel deep sadness. I start to feel so alone and so isolated, like no one will ever truly understand me, no one will ever cherish me for who I am, no one will just get me and hold space for me in the way that I need. In a world of billions of people, it's sad to know that you very often feel like you can't find your place, your true belonging. We are creatures that evolved to constantly seek out belonging. From an evolutionary perspective, if your tribe didn't want you, then you were left behind to fend for yourself, and you probably didn't make it. As a result, humans crave feeling understood, feeling like we belong, feeling like we mean something to other people. That need for all of us gets met in different ways, but there is a core theme to all of them. If a person feels seen, then they feel loved. If we do not feel seen, if we feel rejected, then usually the result is sadness and despair. No matter what we do, these moments of sadness are going to happen sometimes. They'll happen during the big times when we experience a major loss or tragedy, and they'll happen during the little times when we remember or experience all the times that we felt alone. Following society's perfectionistic ideal of pushing those feelings away doesn't do anything for us. Finding people in your life who are willing to hear your sadness without judging it or changing it or fixing it or trying to make it go away, that's not easy. Very few people have developed that skill. So many of us grew up in ways that didn't know how to honor sadness for what it was and give it space. You may only have one person in your life who knows how to do this. You may be lucky and have a few. You may have none. Having a lack of that kind of support reinforces the idea that wanting to express your sadness is something that you should feel guilty or shameful for because everyone seems to keep trying to make your vulnerabilities go away or be different. But know that that doesn't have to be the case. Your feelings of sadness are okay. If you feel sad, if you are hurting, know that I see you. It is so human to have those sad thoughts, to feel alone, to feel disappointed, to feel hopeless. The human experience is not complete without those feelings of sadness because we are constantly seeking and rarely finding. That's hard, and it's okay to feel sad. If you have a trusted person in your life who can sit with your sadness, then I invite you to share your vulnerabilities. If you don't, I understand how isolating and maddening that can feel. Very few people know how to listen to the feelings of others without making it mean something about themselves, and so most people, with good intentions, go along with the ride of just trying to give you advice or fix it. If this is your situation, know that you are not alone. That doesn't make it any less hard, but there are things that we can do. First, recognize when you are feeling sad. Many of us skip over this step and just try to do something about it, but it's okay to sit with the feeling for a bit. For me, sadness makes my body feel heavy. I feel tears behind my eyes, and my breathing becomes labored, like deep sighs. Next, sit with your thoughts and validate yourself. I know how tricky this part is because I so often find myself wishing that someone could do it for me. I understand. At the same time, the more you practice it for yourself, the more in tune with yourself you will become. So, why do you feel sad? What do you feel like you are missing? What preceded this feeling of sadness? What would you hear that would make you feel seen and understood? If you can answer that last question, try saying it to yourself and also validate yourself for feeling sad. Tell yourself that it makes sense why you would feel sad. Tell yourself that you have every reason to feel sad and that it's okay to feel sad for a little while. Giving yourself space to feel your emotions and then telling yourself what you needed to hear is one of the most powerful self-care exercises that exists. Feel free to couple it with a peaceful walk or a warm bath or a meditative coloring page if you have the time, or don't. Do what feels right to you. Giving yourself time and space to feel your sadness and to honor it is genuinely one of the most profound and meditative human experiences. From these moments can come bursts of renewed creativity, feelings of self-worth, and a sense of purpose. It's easy to see why society's perfectionistic view of just trying to force ourselves to be happy all the time is so appealing. It avoids discomfort, it saves time so we can just go ahead and keep being productive, and it avoids conflict. On a large scale, viewing ourselves as robots with on and off switches for all of the negative emotions that I've discussed thus far seems a lot easier to deal with. Though we are not robots, we are incredibly complex beings with powerful brains that hold on to memories, plan the future, solve problems, seek answers, collect with like-minded others, and experience waves of anxiety, anger, and of course, sadness. These feelings alert us to our inner needs. They tell us what's wrong. They help us find meaning in life, and they are integral in crafting each individual human's own unique personality and experience. And this is precisely why I've only loosely described each of these emotions using society's term of negative, because I don't think that they are inherently negative. I think culturally they have been labeled as negative to uphold certain values and expectations. But I personally reject so many of those expectations now that I can't help but view these emotions as positive. They are difficult in the moment. Yes, absolutely. It is not easy to go about life when you are in the thralls of any of these emotions. True. Most people in the world find these emotions to be deeply uncomfortable. Definitely. But pretending like these emotions aren't there and that they don't serve a therapeutic purpose is damaging and erases at least half, if not more, of the human experience. Your emotions matter. All of them matter. And if you're worried that these emotions will overcome you, sometimes they will. If you're worried that these emotions will sometimes stop you from doing something, sometimes they will. If you're worried that these emotions will sometimes make you say or do things that you'd rather you didn't, sometimes they will. Most of those side effects, though, come from a place of worrying about the emotions in the first place and not truly giving yourself permission to feel them without making them mean something horrible about you or others. When it comes down to it, I think there are an awful lot of perfectionistic thought patterns surrounding anxiety, anger, and the emotion that we discussed today, sadness. If you consciously or unconsciously believe that you should be happy all the time, I hear you. I'm still there too. But we can chip away at that block one little baby chip at a time. You can't be happy all the time. You never will be, and that's okay. All of your emotions have a purpose. They all need space once in a while. They're all there for a reason. And learning to hear them, feel them, and work with them is one of the best things you can do for yourself. I opened today's episode with a quote attributed to Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. "Every man has his secret sorrows, which the world knows not, and oftentimes we call a man cold when he is only sad." Within us, we all have our own unique thoughts, experiences, and memories. We all have our secret sorrows that lead us to feel sad. We all have our secret fears that lead us to feel anxious. We all have our secret beliefs that lead us to feel angry. I invite you to get acquainted with yours and to truly accept them, because they're okay. That's when we really know ourselves. And that's when we can really start living according to our standards and to no one else's. Thank you for listening today, fellow perfectionists. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more perfectionism-related content and to help the channel grow. If these episodes are resonating with you and you think they might resonate with others, please feel free to share it as well. Until next time, fellow perfectionists.